Hey everybody, this is Renae from The Space Between, and you are listening to The Space Between podcast, the show that lets you listen to how the fans feel about the music, the art behind over 30 years of the Dave Matthews Band. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Space Between podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans of the Dave Matthews Band. So each week I bring a Dave Matthews Band fan on to tell their journey, if you will, with the Dave Matthews Band. So today is like every week, we have Mr. Gabe Matthews here as our guest. And so Gabe, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell us who you are, where you are, and how in the world did you meet the Dave Matthews Band?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Renae. I appreciate it. Gabe Matthews. I am the lead vocalist and rhythm guitar player for the band Crowded Streets. So we are a Northern Virginia-based Dave Matthews Band tribute. We have been in existence, I'm kind of dating myself, right? But since 2006, right? We've been going at it strong. So it's been a great ride. We've had the luxury of traveling kind of up and down the East Coast, all throughout the Midwest. And we've played for, as few as a dozen people, right, at times. And when we were first starting out, as many as probably 10,000. So it's been kind of a roller coaster. It's been a wild ride, and we're still going at it. Not nearly as much as we used to, but back in our earlier times. None of us are getting any younger here, but we're still enjoying everything that we do. So
exactly. So what lit the passion? How do you get to a place in your life where you I really think we should do a tribute band based on the music of the Dave Matthews Band? How do you get to that spot in your life where that sounds like a really good idea?
Yeah. So I actually came from a musical family, right? So my mom was a singer and piano player, and had three other sisters that all sang as well. And so she was my first inspiration for playing music, right? And so as I kind of grew up and I started getting introduced to so many different variations of music, right? In the early 90s, right? I was my first instrument, by the way, is drums. I'm a drummer to my heart, right? To my core. I love it. And I was listening to this new band at the time called the Dave Matthews Band. And it was unlike anything I had heard, right? And primarily I was focusing in on the percussion and Carter Beauford's playing, and man, I was blown away. I mean, it was like nothing that I had heard, right? And that mixed in with all the other different instruments at the time, right? I mean, everything was coming off of the grunge phase, kind of, if you will. Hearing the sax and the rhythm guitar and the violin mixed with the drums, I was like, wow, this is just different, right?
Yeah.
And so I immediately got into that music. I started playing in some other bands here in the area, and we did a variety of music, some originals, mostly covers, right? And at one point I sat down and I tried to think, in this particular Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, what's going to be different, right? So we started focusing on the idea of a tribute band. And then it got to, all right, well, what band has enough songs, right, that can maintain a full night show, get people into it, has a great following. And instantly I thought of the Dave Matthews Band. And at that point, the search started going on for like-minded musicians. It was very, very hard, right? I'll be the first one to say it was very hard, because as a drummer, that was the first thing I wanted to do was play drums, but I knew I wasn't good enough to play drums. So I picked up the guitar and started playing and doing my best to learn. And I got to say, Dave Matthews is not an easy one to try and emulate, right, from a rhythm guitar perspective. So, and it just kind of took off from there. So I had a group of guys that we all kind of loved the music, and it's been interchanging of different members throughout the years, right? Our kind of 16-year career here. But everybody seems to get along really well and seems to have a deep appreciation for the music.
That's amazing. So is it a prerequisite to like the music or even be aware of the music of the Dave Matthews Band to be in a tribute band? Have you ever had anybody rotating in and out of the band that wasn't really familiar with their music, and so they kind of had to study up on it a little bit?
We have had sub members, right, that have filled in, but nothing that I would consider like a permanent member, right?
Right.
And at times, we've we had auditions for bass players at one point, right? When we had a changeover, and a lot of them were like, "Yeah, this stuff's a little bit too difficult," right? So it took a lot longer than we anticipated, right? And then we had a changeover in drums from one drummer to the next, and similar situation. Everybody loves to try and emulate Carter, but very few, right? I know of a couple of the guys that are out there right now doing it that do a phenomenal job. So that's easily the hardest chair, in my opinion, to fill is the drum chair. But it helps to obviously know the music, right, and have an appreciation for it. And so even if you're not, I got to say, even if you're not a diehard Dave Matthews fan, right, most people that I introduce to the music still kind of take a step back and say, wow, like this is interesting music, right, and can appreciate the level of musicianship that each one of those guys bring to the stage.
Right. Now, did you say that as you already formed the band and you're looking for people and you're like, I want to be the drummer, but I know that I'm not up to that yet. And you're like, I'm gonna be the lead guitarist, like, and you didn't know how to play the guitar. How do you just all of a sudden go, okay, let me figure this out? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest with you. So it's taken a lot of years of learning. Like, obviously when I first started learning, YouTube wasn't a thing, right? And so at that point, it was like, it wasn't as easy as just looking up and trying to look up how other people are playing or how Dave's playing it. So it was more of trying to learn the music, figure out the chord structures and things like that, or asking guys that I knew that play guitar that were just much better than me. How do you play this? Can you show me how? Taking lessons. So that kind of fueled my desire to want to learn and try to get better at guitar, right? And then at that point, once I'm trying to learn how to play it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to play and sing, right? This is impossible.
Right. And so probably at different like rhythms and beats, like, or not beats, but like I've always heard that like Dave plays one way and sings another, and that brings like a whole different level of challenge to it. Did you find that?
100%. I try, just as a rule of thumb, I try not to use my entire brain all the time, right? But so when I do stuff like this, it forces me into different parts of thinking, right? That I wouldn't normally put together. Now, I will say, having grown up playing the drums first, I think that kind of helped me from an advantage perspective, because the rhythmic nature of how he plays, along with the what I'll call the percussiveness of how he plays the guitar and attacks each note, I kind of take from my drum years, right, of that offbeat playing some kinds, and so that definitely helped me. But by no means am I up to the level of Dave's playing, and by no means am I done learning. So
Right. So I just want to talk a little bit more about Crowded Streets. What have you found in your playing experience as being like the Dave of the group? What's been your most challenging song to play on the guitar? But then what is the most challenging song for you to sing?
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Rich from the Eddie Casino Band out in Las Vegas. We're really excited to get this journey going, celebrating our music, our original music, on all platforms. We just released our first single over Labor Day weekend called Eddie Casino. If you're looking for new music, look out for our next single coming out to Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Apple Music. These guys in the band are really excited to get started playing music for you all. If you like Tom Petty, Zach Brown, Jason Mraz, Dave Matthews Band, Rob Thomas, Jimmy Buffett, Pink Floyd, Stapleton, Bare Naked Ladies, Goose, Billy Strings, Sting and the Police, a ton of influences that we bring to the table. Hope you enjoy our music and look forward to seeing you soon live on stage.
Oh, great questions. Probably the most challenging song for me to play on guitar is probably Drive In, Drive Out, because a lot of single note picking, especially there at the intro, took me weeks of practicing to finally figure that out. And so that was probably the toughest to play. A lot of people will say, or might say Crash, just because it's such a odd chord structure on the neck of the guitar, but that one's definitely hurts your hands when you're done playing it, but I've played it a million times, so it's not that difficult. But probably drive in, drive out the hardest. As far as to sing,
now, were you a singer before all of this? Like, is singing come natural to you?
Well, I don't know that it came natural. No, I don't even know. That
it's working for you. Okay, it's working for you.
Yeah, it's you know, I've been able to scoot by. But yes, I when I was in some of the other bands, I was a singer. I played drums as well in some of those other bands. So that definitely helped. And obviously, you know, like I said, my mom was a singer, so she, you know, I had that in my blood, so to speak, right? So it was nice. It was nice to carry that over. From a sing perspective, so kind of two songs, right? Halloween is a tough one to sing just because it's so much screaming. Yeah. And then I was actually listening to this last night. I was just messing around watching TV and listening to music and kind of fiddling around the guitar last night. But the Central Park version of What You Are, you know, with the outro, a lot of singing or a lot of screaming. So similar to that of Halloween, I thought it's a difficult one to perform. And whenever we play What You Are, it's always kind of that version, right? So it's like, all right, here we go, guys. You know, fingers crossed that doesn't turn out horrible. So
as a singer, how does one, because I think about things like this and I may never get the answers from like how the band does it. And so you are the one I'm going to ask. So how does one condition their body to do these 10-second or long screaming parts of songs like Dave is so well known to do? Most recently, you know, I think the most impressive one, at least for me, but I've heard from others, is when he opened up with ABI at SPAC this year, and the scream that he was able to deliver was like, how the fuck is he going to continue singing for the rest of this concert after he just did that? So like, what does one do to prepare for that? And like you said, that is those are hard songs to sing because of that. And surely you've tried it, but like, how does someone get prepared for that?
So Dave is fortunate, as a lot of professional musicians are, to have his vocal coach go with him to every single show, right? So that definitely helps in doing those vocal warm-ups, right? I mean, the voice is just like any other muscle, right? I mean, the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Sure.
And so I'm sure that in and of itself helps. For me personally, I try and sometimes warm up. Whiskey is also a great choice for, you know,
warm your whole body.
Yeah, exactly. Or just drink so much that you don't give a shit, right? So
that's another good way to perform.
if your voice cracks, hey, you know, some people appreciate the authenticity of it. So
that's right.
But
you
that's
won't even
remember. Right? Yeah, exactly. You may
Although
wake up with a headache.
Exactly, that's the differences between like being a musician now versus like a musician in the early 90s is we have everyone, you know, recording almost everything we do these days because it's so easy. But back in the 90s, if you messed up on stage, there might be proof. There might not be, right?
Absolutely. To your earlier point, if nobody saw it, it didn't happen, right? So
I always joke, that it was such a great time to do anything negative because there was probably no trace that you ever did it.
Yeah, 100%. When I think and I see and I've seen videos of interviews with Dave, and I've heard him and I see other artists talk about either them smoking or, you know, smoking cigarettes or have previously smoked. That blows my mind because I smoked very, very briefly back in I would say late 90s, early 2000s. And when I tried to sing, man, my voice like kept locking up because of smoking. Right. So really? I stopped doing it. Yeah, I stopped doing it. So it's kind of interesting how some people can get away with it, others can't. Yeah. So for me, it's just never been a thing. So
we're all built so different. And I feel like sometimes when I hear people sing and they have that raspiness of their voice, that's almost my first thought is, I bet there is, you know, a smoker, because smoking does and can change the way your voice sounds, especially if you've smoked for years. And so, but I love a good raspy voice. I hope, you know, it doesn't require smoking for everyone, like you said, and that's a good thing because smoking is bad. But I love a good raspy voice. So let's transition. So tell me how it is that We kind of talked about how you found the band, and how has your love grown for the Dave Matthews Band since, we've been doing this for 32 years now. And of course, you've seen the evolution of the band because you've been watching for so long. But tell me your thoughts on the evolution of the band, kind of a comparison of what you think of them now versus what you had in the 90s. And do you have some likes and dislikes of things that happened along the way? Tell me. I mean, again, this podcast is all about opinions and fan perspectives. Mm-hmm. So there's no right or wrong answer. Everyone has a favorite, and that's okay. That is okay. We're just fans of the band. So tell me, what are your thoughts on 32 years of the Dave Matthews Band?
So first off, just the 32 years part is in and of itself is amazing, right? That any band has been able, yeah, right, and that any band has been able to last as long as they have, right? Couple that with the fact that they're still going strong. I think I can count COVID, and I think there was even, I can't remember what the year was off the top of my head, but one other year where I think they didn't tour over the summer. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So call it 30 years of consistent touring. I mean, that's unreal, right?
I don't know how they're, good trainers, good personal trainers.
Yeah, 100%, right? And nobody's out of shape, right? So, God bless them all for that. But, to see the band, as I mentioned, in the 90s, right? Yeah. To compare it to what they sound like now or what they are now, in my opinion, it's almost like two different bands. Obviously, the songs are still the same, but yeah. I think the writing style has evolved. Mm-hmm. I think, and again, just my personal opinion, exactly. I think in the earlier part of the 90s, you with Dave, a lot of Dave's vocals, I think you felt, or at least I felt, that he was trying to say a lot, right, in every song, and almost trying to fit in as many lyrics as he can, where I think now in his wise old age, right, yes. It's like he's grown and his writing style has changed. So it's like he's letting the song breathe a little bit more, right? So I think it's hard to compare really the two, because I feel like it's almost like two different bands.
It is.
Now, that said, do I miss the violin sounds of Boyd? 100% I do, right? But I also felt like at the time where they had Boyd and they had Butch Taylor on piano, that was just one of the best sounds that I've heard, right? Yeah. So now they got Buddy in there and they've got Jeff. And everybody sounds just so good. And I love the addition of Tim. I know he's been there for a while now, but yeah. I love just the hardcore grunt, really driving electric guitar sound that he brings to the table. And obviously Carter, holds everything down. So
he's one
it's
that
unreal.
Fascinates me because, I would like to say that all of the positions of the band, no matter what instrument they play, it's all a physical job because of the traveling that's involved of, you're standing on stage for 3 hours or 2 hours performing. I mean, it's very physical, but they've been able to do it, very well. But Carter, I think he's the one I worry about the most as a nurse. I'm like, he's going to get arthritis. Like something's going to go wrong with his hands.
My gosh.
He's killing it. And he's 65. I mean, he could retire. He could apply for Medicare at this point, right? But he's still up there, rock starring it on the drum. As a drummer, having a background with drums, what are your thoughts on how he's been able to kill it, for lack of better words, for this long as a drummer and as an advanced drummer as he is?
I mean, there's got to be some kind of, I don't know his lineage. There's got to be some kind of good genes in there somewhere, right? Yes. I mean, to your point, for that guy to do this as long as he has, and to be just that strong day in and day out. I mean, obviously, I got to imagine he's got personal trainers that keep him in shape, because it's nothing like I've ever seen. I mean, I compare his popularity to those of from got Rest Soul from Rush, right?
Yes.
In my opinion, is some of the best drummers that's ever walked the planet. But to the fact that he's just still going at it, right? I mean, is just incredible, and I can't believe it. And to have the brightest smile while he's doing it on stage, clearly it doesn't look like the guy's upset about anything.
No.
I've had the fortune of meeting him a few times, and just the nicest guy. So the smile that you see on stage is not dissimilar to that if you see him off stage. I mean, to your point, I don't know if he's got stock in Advil or what, but I mean, the guy's got some kind of superpower that he taps into that I could only dream of having.
He's definitely some kind of superhuman. I'm in my 40s and I face things like carpal tunnel syndrome from being at the computer. And then, I'm like, oh, but here we have a 65-year-old dude just like
going at it.
Why am I so weak, right?
I'm with you. I get winded walking to the mailbox. So
exactly.
trying to do drums for 3 hours at a time. So, and by the way, I'm struggling not to put on my glasses. So I feel you.
Look, I always wear glasses, and I was like, I'm going to try to take them off, but I'm not having to do any reading right now. And so there we go.
There you go.
So guys, if you are listening to this on a podcast app, just know that you can watch this interview on YouTube. You just simply find the Space Between podcast on YouTube. And of course, you can watch this. And we have over 60 episodes that are now available for everyone to watch. So Gabe, let's talk a little bit more about the Dave Matthews Band. Now, I think it would be an injustice for me not to say something about your name. And I know that I'm not the first person in this whole world to say, okay, let's talk about your name, Gabe Matthews. How many times have you walked up to someone, especially in an atmosphere where you're playing their music, and you say, my name is Gabe Matthews, and they're like, what? Dave? Did you say Dave?
Yes, exactly. But so more times than I can keep counting, right? So because obviously Gabe is not a normal name, but even when I just introduce myself for first name, right, they hear Dave, and so that's I've answered to much worse. So I mean, it is what it is. So
I think it was just basically a sign that you were born to do this, right? Like, I don't know if you were born to sing the songs of the Dave Matthews Band, but it really has worked out. Like, your name has just worked out for all of this, because it's a hilarious coincidence.
Yeah, and I'd be lying if I said when we were tossing around band ideas, Gabe Matthews Band, it wasn't put out there, right? And I was like, absolutely not, right? I had to shoot that one down. So I
think that would have been pretty awesome. But also, I love Crowded Streets. So let's talk about how did you come up with a name? I know that must have been something that was really hard, because once you kind of name your band, you're stuck with it for the most part. And I know that Dave and the boys have told that story about the Dave Matthews Band, how that's just kind of happened. And really, by the time they figured it out, like, there was nothing they could do about it. So how did you go about choosing Crowded Streets?
It was, at the time, I think there was 5 of us in the band. We were sitting around trying to think of something that, for lack of a term, did suck, right?
Yes.
And I remember songs being thrown out, and just, we were sitting in our former bassist basement, throwing out ideas. And one of the guys, I don't know if you've ever seen Anchorman, when the guy's like, I love lamp. One of the guys in our group was like picking out things in the basement. At one point, he's like, "What about the ironing boards?" I was like, "Are you serious right now?" So it was definitely tough. Obviously, it had to have some kind of relation to what they were doing. I think I threw out the name Big Eyed Fish, which I think is now taken. I think so. So, and eventually, it got to a point where I don't think we wanted to do Ants Marching. I think that was kind of one of the things where we're just like, yeah, it's almost like too obvious kind of thing.
Right.
I can't remember who came up with Crowded Streets, to be quite frank with you. But when they threw it out, it wasn't even before these Crowded Streets. It was literally just a condensed version of Crowded Streets. Mm-hmm. So it was like, okay, we can go with that, right? And then we started obviously mulling over like logo ideas and things like that. And we've had basically the same logo for the past 16 years or whatever. So it's kind of if it ain't broken, don't fix it kind of mentality. So that's really how it kind of came about. We're all sitting in a basement drinking beer and mulling over ideas.
Magic happens in basements every day, right?
That's it.
I like the name. I think it touches on a piece of the band. And for fans of the Dave Matthews Band, they're going to pick up on that, right? So automatically you've got like, okay, and then I'm sure, but also, it's a name where it doesn't have to associate you guys with them, and so you're coming at it from both sides, and so that's really awesome. So how do you plan, and who helps you plan where you guys are going to play? Tell me what it looks like to be trying to promote a band and to schedule your band so that you can get in front of crowds. How does all that work, and who helps you with all of that?
Oh man, it's been an army of people over the years. We're actually at the point now where, because we're not playing, I mean, if I were to back it up, call it 10 years ago, right? I mean, we were playing every single weekend. Sometimes we would play local venues in the DC area one weekend, and then the following weekend we were traveling to St. Louis, right? And then the weekend after that it was West Palm Beach. So, I mean, it was getting to be a lot, right? It's since died down to where, we're not doing a lot of travel right now. And we don't even play that many shows. We typically do like 2, maybe 3 shows in the DC area. Just simply because we want to make every single show an event, right?
Yes.
Something big. Jake, our lead guitar player, he and I will also do, and we've got a show coming up in January in Northern Virginia here, kind of the Dave and Tim thing, right? So he and I do acoustic shows. I think I mentioned to you before, we did a DMB family party in Charlottesville, right, the day of the show.
Yes,
yeah, which
how was
which
the attendance for that? And like, how does it feel to perform in front of people that are going to know everything that you're singing? Do you feel like that's harder or easier to perform in front of fans of the Dave Matthews Band?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Some will be the overly judgmental critics, right? Oh, you played that wrong, or something like that. And,
right.
But I would say 90% of the people really appreciate what we're doing, right? Absolutely. And the fact that they're singing along and they feel the energy of what we're doing and how hard with the amount of effort we're putting out to try and make a performance a good one. They can really appreciate it. And, and obviously in the typical part of the dance marching, the people in every direction kind of thing, you're like, stop, and everybody sings back at you. Yeah. That's a great part, right? So that's always great. But as far as like booking stuff, we've had booking agents, we've had publicists, we've had managers over the years. And back when we were doing a lot of traveling, it was necessary. But now, because we've scaled it back such a significant amount to where it's only a couple shows a year, but make it more of an event, we typically just do it ourselves now. So.
Gotcha. So what does the future look like for you guys? Are there goals? Like, what are your plans for 2024 and beyond? What are some things that you're still wanting to achieve as a band?
Probably just to stay afloat.
Yeah, just to keep making music.
Yeah, really. And so it's kind of funny because I do a lot of solo acoustic shows in the area. And, when I get booked, a lot of times it first started out as I was just doing Crowded Streets material or for Dave Matthews material, right? But then people were like, oh, we want to hear some variety as well. So I had to start mixing in other things. Now it's like, it depends on where I show up to a show.
Sure.
People, do they want to hear variety, or, they start asking for requests of Dave Matthews? And I'm like, hey, I'll play that stuff all night long. Like, I have no problem with that. So it's just when you start to throw curveballs, that's when things get a little sour. So, but as far as 2024 goes, look, I've been blessed to do this for 16 years, right? And I'm honored to take the stage every single time I do with the guys in my band. I feel incredibly fortunate to share the stage with 5 other, what I consider to be some of the best musicians in the Northern Virginia area. So if the more they want to play, I'm all for it, right?
Absolutely.
But if it's just to the point where we put on 2 or 3 of the most kick-ass shows of 2024, then I'm fine with that too. I don't have any expectations. Like I said, I've done the whole travel thing, and it's been great. It's been fun. It's been a lot of work. It's been tiring. It's been taxing. But at the same time, it's been worth it. So because you can, paint us a picture of what it looks like to be on the road. And I know that that's something that fans are always talking about, with the Dave Matthews Band, is how can they continue to do this? Because living life on the road is not as easy as, checking into a hotel and having this great time. Paint a picture for us what it really looks like to be out on the road and away from home and away from like the conveniences of things in your home. What does that look like? So I'm smiling because I will give you a specific example. So in summary, it's not easy, right? But I'll give you a specific example. Years ago, we were hired to play up in Minneapolis, and it was one of those things where we had to get coordinated airfare and all that, and and so all that was taken care of. And so we all leave, and because a lot of these concert promoters, this was a multi-day festival, we were headlining the last day, and so the concert promoters, they don't want to pay out a lot of money, right? Sure. So they get you the earliest flights. So we left DC, I think at like 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday. We arrived in Minneapolis. I can't remember what time it was, but it was relatively early. We had a guy who was in a bus that picked us up from the airport, drove us to our hotel and checked us in. And then 30 minutes after, a concert promoter calls and says, "Hey, we see some storms coming in. Hang tight. We're gonna call you back in about 45 minutes." Okay, no problem. They call us 45 minutes later. We think we're good. We're coming to pick you guys up. Okay, they come, they pick us all up, and they transport us over, and they have, we get to the fairgrounds, and we get out. And by the way, not every show is like this. I call this one out because it's kind of a funny story. And so we get out of the vans, and they've got all the stage hands. They unpack all of our equipment and start, side staging it. There's a current act playing on the stage right now. They're like, "Hey, just in case the storms come in, we've moved a lot of the folks around. We're actually going to start you guys early." We're like, "Okay, no problem." And so this act finishes up. Stagehands come, tear down their equipment, set ours up, do all of our line checks, and they're like, "Can you guys come up for a quick sound check?" Okay. So we get up there. We literally play half of a song, and the skies open up, and it pours and pours, right? And so of course everybody in the fairgrounds has to leave and go to their to their cars because there's lightning in the area, and probably an hour and a half passes. And they're like, "We got to call it. We got to cancel the show." And I'm like, "Okay." At this point, I was just cracking up laughing because we had already gotten paid, right? Which was a great thing, right? But like we flew out here, we got paid for 45 seconds of a song, right? Like this is the easiest gig ever. And then at that point, long story short, they ended up finding another venue for us to play at that evening, and they asked us if we would do it. We're like, "Hell, man, we've come this far. Why not?" Right?
Yeah.
So we go, we play this show. We're all at this point just hammer drunk because we've been sitting around in the rain for hours, right? And so we get set up, we play the show, we get done probably about 2:00 in the morning. And we're all, again, just rip roaring drunk. We get back to our hotel. It's probably 3:30 in the morning. We're all getting ready to go to bed, and the phone rings, and it's the bus driver. "Hey, I'm here to pick you up." I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, we're taking you to the airport. But our flight doesn't leave for a couple hours." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm only doing one trip."
Oh my God.
Okay. So we hop back in the bus and we go right to the airport, and we were those guys that were sitting at the gate, hammer drunk, sleeping, waiting for them to call us onto the flight. So I know that wasn't a very short story, but that's what kind of like what life on the road kind of looks like.
No, and I'm sure, one never knows what the weather is going to do, and there's always going to be circumstances that cancel things, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully if we pull a silver lining from that, hopefully you got, even though it was 45 seconds in the first part of that, hopefully the second part where you got to perform later in that day, hopefully that gained you guys some exposure, and some good things come from that. So maybe.
Well, it was great because we're sitting there and we walk into this bar and it is completely empty. And our sax player at the time, he and I are sitting there just, drinking and so forth. And we're talking to this guy, and he's like, "What are you guys here for?" We're like, "We're supposed to headline this festival." He goes, "Wait, are you guys at Dave Matthews Tribute Band?" We're like, "Yeah." He goes, "You guys are playing here tonight?" We're like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's awesome." And next thing you know, he starts calling people, and it's like the telephone game, right? And then before you know it, there's 300 people jam-packed into this bar, right? That were all had been at the festival that made their way over to this tiny bar to come see us play. So it was exactly that. It was cool.
It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a happy ending at this story. So Gabe, as we close, I do want to talk about the Dave Matthews Band, because of course that is what brings us all together on this podcast, is we're all fans of the Dave Matthews Band. So tell me, what did you think of 2023? This year, for a lot of people is marked as a banner year because not only was it an album release year, but because history was broken in many ways outside of their new album. So what are your thoughts on the 2023 tour? And can you believe this, right? Like, that's where I'm sitting, is like, I cannot believe that it keeps getting better and better. and better, in my opinion, after 32 years. How did 2023 treat you?
What's up, everybody? This is David with the Gabe Matthews Tribute Band. We're a nationally touring tribute to DMB, playing shows all over the country and beyond. Our goal is to bring you back to the classic sound that you fell in love with in the 90s and the 2000s, featuring a violin, saxophone, and maybe some keyboards sprinkled in as well. You can find out information about all of our tours and shows by visiting thedmtb.com. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram and other socials by searching the Dave Matthews Tribute Band or the DMTB. Hope to see you on the road and enjoy the Space Between podcast.
It treated us well because there was such relevance, right, for what we were doing, right, for what they were doing. I mean, and the guys just, God bless, they just keep playing, right? And so I think you know Kelly Archibald, right?
I love her.
Yeah, sweet gal. So she put together a thing when they played at Merriweather in Maryland and put together another party. And so Alex, our violinist, he and I did a pre-show there, and it was packed there as well, right? So it's like, and then the subsequent shows that we booked off of there were jam-packed shows. So it's like the fact that they just continue to jaw drop, right? It's like just when you think that they couldn't get musically better, I feel like they do, right? Just when you feel like these guys at 32 years of doing this strong, they've got to slow down. They don't. So it's just, I just continue asking myself, and that's kind of where, like you talk about 2024, it's like, you know, I want to keep things afloat, but it's like, I don't know how much longer I can keep up with these guys. Right?
Right.
I mean, they just keep going, and man, I'm at all, right. But at the same time, I'm incredibly blessed to do what I do. And I'm appreciative that everybody that we do it for appreciates that what we do. And so I'll keep going at it as long as I'm able.
Yeah, same. And, you know, I never have expectations of the band. And maybe that's not the right word, but I think it is. I don't have expectations that they, they need to keep going. I want them to, but I don't expect them to be able to go forever. I mean, again, we're at 32 years. I think the most senior member of the band is around 65. And so we know that is something that we won't have forever, because there are two things in life that we can count on, right? Birth and death,
right.
And then taxes as well, if number three. But
yeah, maybe.
I'm so thankful, like you said, to be alive in a time where we have this band, because in my experience, this band has done more than just bring music to all of our ears. It's brought together a community of like-minded people who have found each other because of a passion for music. And so, you know, I'm so thankful for them because of the music, but thankful for all that they've done for, you know, the fans, and then also just the planet, right? Like these guys are similar to superheroes, and maybe that's what they are, because they're able to do this for so long. But definitely rock stars they have reached that status for sure. They may
100%.
never get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they got fucked, but I don't think they need that in our eyes. I think that we have already, let them know. And I think they know that their fans think that they are the best, that they are rock stars, and that I hope there is, but I don't think that they'll ever be a band that is quite like them, because, they started in the 90s when technology was so new and so sparse. And here they are in basically a different world and still rocking it, right? Just still killing it. So there's nothing that's happened in the 32 years that's ever really swayed their ability to produce really amazing music. and like you said, music that has lyrics that's relevant for the time and
Right.
that needs to be heard. And so I always encourage people, if you've only heard the Dave Matthews Band music, but you've never listened to the songs, you're missing half of it, if not more, because the lyrics are impressive. And no matter what your background is or what your culture, your religion, I feel like the message that they continue to give their fans and their listeners of their music is just so relevant for everyone. And so what a time to be alive, right? Time to be alive. But yeah, Gabe, thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I love that you're able to bring, a completely different story than any other fan. And again, that's kind of the purpose of this podcast, is because we're all different. We've all found the band in different ways, but we're all brought together because of these like-mindedness in music. And so I think with your story, you took it a little bit further than most of us can do, because I would say for the most part, people aren't just automatically musically talented. You either are or you're not. And so you were able to kind of level up in your fanship by not only loving the music, but performing it for people that also loved it or fell in love with it because of you. So thank you for kind of leveling up your fanhood. And I'm so thankful that that's made you happy and that you've been able to make a career out of it. And doing something that you love really makes a big difference on
100%.
your personal life, right? Because if you have a shitty job, it does carry over into your personal life. So I'm thankful that 100%. You have been able to do what you love, and it's also brought so much joy to other people. So thank you so much for what you do.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Like I feel like, for the people that I play for, those that are actually listening, they have the hardest job, right? Listening to me perform, right? So I consider my job to be easy. So I'm certainly appreciative of everybody that sits back and listens, that's listened to us online, followed us, bought tickets to shows, et cetera. And thankful for people like you that put these things together. I mean, I see them every single day on Facebook, and I'm like, man, your popularity is just going through the roof. So kudos to you for putting this podcast together. So
thank you. I'm so happy to have a way to share all of these stories. And, again, I will repeat myself until I die. I think that this story needs to be, it needs to be down in history, because music history is history. And so that is what I'm doing, is I'm just documenting the story of the fans behind this band, because again, 32 years is not something to just turn your nose up at. It's a major deal. And so in closing, tell our listeners how, if they want to know more about your band, if they have never heard of you, what are some ways that they can kind of look up what you guys are doing and find out if you have any future events or where you post events so that people can find you guys?
Yeah, so mostly it's done on Facebook. We do a little bit of it on Instagram as well, but it's mostly done on Facebook, is where we announce things. We used to do a website, but don't do it anymore. It got hacked, and anyway, long story. So, so it's mostly on Facebook right now. We've got a lot of videos out there on YouTube. If you could go under Crowded Street, the Dave Matthews Band Experience, you'll see a lot of videos that we posted out there. So, go check it out. If you guys like what you hear and you're ever in the Northern Virginia area, come check us out. And, or if you guys want us to come to you, let us know that too. And
I'm going to sign up right now. Can you come to Fayetteville, Arkansas? We'd love it.
Hey, that's like the one state that I don't think we've played in yet. So absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, I will host it. Like we'll do the whole thing. We'll talk about it later.
That sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, again, if you're listening to this on a podcast app, just know that you can watch this all on YouTube. And there are over 60 episodes of The Space Between. And each week there's a different fan story. So you can surely find one that you like to hear. We have stories of love. We have stories of death. We have stories of musicians, but with all one thing in common. We love the Dave Matthews Band and how the Dave Matthews Band continues to change our life through their music. So Gabe, again, thank you so much for being on this show, guys. Be sure to tune in every Friday as I bring a new show to you and a new fan with that show. So guys, as I always say, peace, love, and Dave Matthews Band.